قناة باللغة الفارسية، قناة ملكوت السماء. وبهذه المناسبة ندعوكم للاحتفال معنا في برامج على البث المباشر مع باقة من خدام الرب بالكلمة والترنيم، وذلك في الأيام التالية: الاحتفال باللغة العربية الاثنين 15 يونيو حزيران 8 مساء بتوقيت شرق أمريكا، 5 مساء بتوقيت كاليفورنيا. الاحتفال باللغة الإنجليزية الثلاثاء 16 يونيو حزيران 8 مساء بتوقيت شرق أمريكا، 5 مساء بتوقيت كاليفورنيا. يمكنكم مشاهدة هذه القناة على منصات التقنيات الحديثة: Apple TV, Roku TV, Fire TV, all smart TV such as Sony TV and Samsung TV, IPTV devices, boxes, IBN-SAT app, all smartphones, all smart devices, IBN website, Trinity Channel website.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. I believe we're live here, and we have a groundbreaking show. We have two activists. One I'm very familiar with, Naren Ambuya, who's an actual human rights activist, and she represents the Syrian people. And we also have Mr. Kadu here, who is also from the Nineveh Plains, Iraq. And he's actually an activist here too. And we have a groundbreaking story here. We're going to discuss the bombing in northern Iraq by Turkey. And we're hearing some very, very alarming things. It's sad that we have not had the media coverage to discuss this. So we're coming to you now with a groundbreaking story urgently. And I'm going to start this off. Naren, give us an update concerning what's going on the grounds in Iraq. Let us know what's going on so that we can, and we're going to get more into the background and details of the Syrian people, but let us know just from the start, a quick summary, what's going on here in Iraq, northern Iraq.
Absolutely. Thank you, Darwin, and thank you to the Trinity Channel for having us. But I'm going to generalize a summary, and then I would like for Athra to go more in depth for it. But basically what is happening is Turkey is targeting the PKK areas or PKK targets. And what's happening is that PKK is using Assyrian towns as human shields. And this is a problem that's been happening. It's ongoing for a very long time, but it is very detrimental to our community because it is creating a purge. It is scaring the people. It's causing a lot of psychological trauma. And this is also a tactic of genocide, I believe, that they're using to push the Assyrians out. And this has been happening since our genocide in 1914, 1915, when it first started. So it is a very dangerous situation. It's a dangerous situation for even the surrounding nations to have any type of terrorism or a group, a rebel group that is just hostile and that is going about its own agenda for their mission to create this greater Kurdistan, in quotes, that they've been trying to attempt to do, to also take part of Turkey as well, part of Syria. And apparently, as you know, northern Iraq has already become part of the Kurds by force, something that Syrians never sold. We never gave up our lands. It was all done by force.
Wow. So you actually just said something that's very important. I'm going to let Mr. Kadu speak up and chime in on this. It's very important. Athra, Kadu, do you have anything to add to that real quick before I say what I have to say?
Shalom Aleichem, peace upon you all. Thank you, Darwin, and thank for Trinity Channel for having us and focusing on this issue. Actually, this occasion, these events are happening since 80s of last century, since 40 years ago or so. And there was a deal between the Iraqi government during Saddam's time and Turkey that Turkey can come 10 kilometers inside Iraq to attack the PKK. And so these villages are living this situation since then, like since 3 to 4 decades are living this situation. And it caused like fleeing the people to diaspora, to the West, to some of them to the big cities. So this trauma, this situation that the Assyrians are facing, specifically in the borders between Turkey and Iraq is going on since decades. And the thing here is like the fight has been brought to us. We are not part of this fight that's happening. So if we may say it like that, there is a Kurdish group is standing against Turkey, and it's coming to our towns and villages to fight Turkey in I don't understand how the way is, and at the same time Turkey is attacking these areas. So basically this is the situation that's going on in these areas.
Wow. So, Naren, you actually brought up something, and we discussed this off camera about how the just horrendous and just downright evil and wicked political maneuvering by the Kurds to create a Kurdistan. It's despicable when you look at a lot of the just when you go back to how the Assyrian people have been directly slaughtered. They've been killed, they've been murdered off, they've been dwindled down in numbers, and it just continues to work against them. But this is an actual act of bombing by Turkey to help continue this onslaught of terrorism really against the Syrian people. Like I can't even believe it. I can't believe we have not had American media coverage over this. I cannot believe that these type of tactics is something that the UN and so many other places haven't stood up and said anything about this. So at this point, do you really believe that a Kurdistan is going to happen? I mean, where are we in that process with this whole Kurdistan state, which I personally publicly say I'm not for that, when you have historically documented Assyrian people who've been there since the beginning of the world. I mean, you're talking about in the Bible. These are biblical people. So I don't understand here. Where are we at in this process?
That's a great question, Darwin. The problem is Kurdistan, you know, it all started by them just saying northern Iraq is Kurdistan. So stating that northern Iraq is Kurdistan, and that's how it all started. We actually willingly accepted the Kurds into northern Iraq. I was born in northern Iraq. My family was one of the families who we accepted them because they were, you know, not fully accepted by Iran, by the Turks, used also as a tool by Turkey. So when we accepted them into northern Iraq and we became friends with them, we literally, my aunts, my family would give them everything we had, you know, especially for the families that were less fortunate, which were the majority of them because they came from the mountains. Correct. They came from the mountains, and because they're a nomadic subgroup. And so even though they claim to have indigenous roots in Iraq, it's actually inaccurate. They're trying to fabricate the history in Iraq, which is not acceptable. It's historically, archaeologically not acceptable. Historians are appalled. They can't believe this is happening. And Iraq, the Iraqi national government, is allowing this. There's only so much international governments can do, but they're definitely watching this. They're very well aware of it. They're actually on the Human Rights Watch as well because they've had so many human rights violations, especially against Assyrians, Yazidis, and other minorities. We became a minority because of them. Because we were friends with them, we accepted them into our hearts, into our homes, into our indigenous lands we have inhabited for almost 7,000 years. So now what they have created this situation to be, which is even worse for us, is this alliance they had with Turkey because, as you know, previously in the 1914 genocide, in the Sappho-Assyrian genocide, they actually had an alliance with the Ottoman Turks to annihilate Christianity in the Middle East. So this alliance, this friendship they had was very, very close. So regardless of what political agenda Turkey had, their agenda, they used the artillery and the horses and any types of support, military support they were able to get from Turkey. They utilized that. They came from the mountains. They came into northern Iraq and, you know, they invaded. And so this friendship they had, now the friendship is not so kosher, as we say, and because now the Kurds have a type of hive mentality, and what they're doing is now that they have increased by great numbers, because Assyrian Christians, we only marry one because we're Christian, but they're married 1, 2, 3, 4. They're increasing in great numbers, and so their population drastically increased. Now we've become a minority because of the constant oppression, purging, slaughtering, raping, kidnapping of Assyrians. And that is the truth. If a Kurd gets mad, that's because they're in denial. If a Kurd says, yeah, actually that is true, what happened, then they're an angel. And this is how we start. We have to start this dialogue of acceptance from the Kurds. The Kurds need to accept what they've done, and they need to stop it. There's a way to correct it, and that comes to a point of being a human, and being a human is not annihilating another indigenous race. So their friendship, Darwin, has gone downhill, and now they're using, which is a very smart way if you don't have heavy artillery, is to use another national military's artillery to strike down where their targets are, where they're using Assyrian towns. So if you look at it, just like how we wiped out ISIS, so you're fighting someone who's not in a military uniform, who's not in a war type of strategy. So they're going into Assyrian towns, and Turkey is trying to find them to bomb them. And who's the one who's getting hurt the most? It's the Assyrians, because they don't, at the end of the day, no matter how much we want them to stay there, they're scared. I mean, when you're watching bombs land in your towns regularly, in a conflict that you're not even part of, as Athra said, it's very frightening.
And let me back you up there. So just to say, so people know, the viewers especially, the Assyrian people are biblical people that have been documented since the civilization, the beginning of civilization, as far as making pioneer way in mathematics, science, law, you name it. So their significance in their actual documentation throughout history, they have right to be in that land. That is their land greatly. And most are not aware of that. So let me just say that. The other thing, we're going to get more in detail about Turkey. So it's very important that we discuss Turkey's agenda. But my next question is PKK. What is the PKK? And I would like you and Arthur Kadu also to chime in on that, and I want his opinion on the PKK as well as yours.
Yeah, so the PKK is translated as the Kurdistan Workers' Party, and it's a left party, and it's separated mostly is in Turkey and Syria, and now in northern Iraq. So it started actually. In Iraq, it started at 80s, so it's already affected in Tur Abdin, which is in the border on the side of Turkey, on the border between Iraq and Syria, and Turkey in the middle. And also in Syria, they are like, we had many news that happened by that area that's controlled by the YPG, which is a branch of the PKK, which is a human rights violation, closing schools, our own schools, forcing people underage to involve in the military, to serve in the military and fight Turkey and ISIS in that period of ISIS. So basically, it's under the cover of Communist Party, if we may say, but it's not really accepting any other nationalities. It's what we are living either in Iraq by the Iraqi Kurdish parties, and that raised since 90s. So even the people catch that and started treating us as second-class or third-class people. Like when you walk in the street, if you don't speak Kurdish, then you are like, or people look at you like, why you don't speak Kurdish? You are in Kurdistan. And even if we start from the name of Kurdistan, it means the land of the Kurds. So whoever is in this land is Kurdish. So basically that's a racist name, if we may say, because not everybody in what's called Kurdistan is Kurdish. So you asked also, Nahrain, that if it could happen that Kurdistan will be a country. in my opinion, as much as they will continue these groups, radical groups, of course, not all the Kurds are the same, but if these radical groups of Kurds continue being racist and trying to make everybody, like calling us Christian Kurds, calling the Yazidis Yazidi Kurds, and then like that. So if they continue in this way, then I don't think that in the whole world there is a racist country that can survive for a long time. And we saw the Saddam's time that he was trying to Arabize everything, and he didn't continue. So as much as you will continue keeping yourself on the top and trying to be better than everybody, by forcing, you can't survive. And we can see the situation currently is not stable in this area. So basically, these Kurdish parties, either PKK or YPG, the part of it, or the parties in Iraq, are going on the same direction, which is showing that they are not racist and they accept everybody. But if you go deep, you will see many actions that they are against the people, including land grabbing in our village, forcing our people in a way or another to leave that area, those villages that had been living for thousands of years, and currently making Nineveh Plain, the place that I'm living in, making it as disputed areas that someday it was Kurdish and it was Kurdistan, and now they want to reclaim it, which is, we don't have any Kurdish thing here, like neither a grave or a historical thing or anything, but they forcibly, by bringing the force here and controlling the area, they are, and also the propaganda that they spend millions of dollars on in the media in the West, and the lobbying, false lobbying that's happening. They are showing, they made it as a picture that this is Kurdistan and the Arabs are taking from them, which neither Arabs nor Kurds are in this area. It's Nineveh Plain, historically Assyrian, and the two nations that are from Mesopotamia, from Assyria, are the Assyrians and the Yazidis. So there's no Kurds here historically.
So Athra, give me more of your background to the area, your background specifically and your connection to the area. I want to know more about you and how you say you were born in Iraq. So can you give us more of your connection to the area personally?
Well, I'm born in Al-Qosh, a town in northern Nineveh. It's in the border between the governorate of Nineveh and Duhok. And historically, this is an Assyrian town, and after Christianity, we were the first nation that converted to Christianity. So we have many historical places. We have many connection, like so many connection between even before Christianity and after Christianity in this area. You can see them, you can watch them by your eyes. And my full-time job is I teach the Assyrian or Syriac language in the government school, and also involved in anything that serves our people here, because we lost a lot. Like just in the last 2 decades, we lost more than 1 million people from Iraq only, and that account in 2 decades increases, getting married and children and so on. So we basically lost more than 1/2 or 2 million people just in 2 decades. And if you get back to 5 decades or centuries, then you will see that what's happening today, the struggle that we are facing, never end. And especially the last shock on our people, it was when ISIS attacked Nineveh Plain, which is the center, the capital, if we may say, of historically and even today of the Assyrian, Chaldean, Syriac people in Iraq and all our homeland, in all Assyria. So many of our people left after 2014 also, and the trauma affected our people. And the trust of our neighbors, as we saw our neighbors cooperating with ISIS, or the militaries around us, that they promised us and international community that they will protect us. Actually, they were running before the civilians.
Oh, wow.
So they were like, in this area in Nineveh Plain, there was the Peshmerga was controlling this area. As I said, it's the territory. This territory in Nineveh Plain is administratively part of Iraq, but after 2003 they came and control it. So they were controlling militarily this area, and when ISIS attacked in 2014 August 6th, we were like, our people were running to Duhok, because it's on the north, and the security forces that's supposed to protect them, they were racing with them by the car. So by that we saw that everybody left us, and even those that promised to protect us, they were before 6th of August, they were preventing the people from Nineveh Plain to leave. Like there was many occasions happened. For example, in Teleskov, they shot one of the guys that wanted to leave the town. After we heard what happened to the Yazidis in 3rd of August, people get afraid, because ISIS was in Mosul, which is about 15 minutes far from Teleskov by driving. So people get afraid and started leaving. So the Peshmerga prevented them from leaving the town. And so after that, in 2 days or 3 days, they left, and without telling the people. And there was hundreds of thousands of the Assyrians and the Yazidis in their town. So we had been saved by God that ISIS didn't reach our towns before us leaving the towns. So basically, that's the situation, living since forever.
And so just to clarify, so right now you have Turkey bombing and targeting the PKK in northern Iraq, and they're basically using them as human shields. And that's pretty much what they're doing, and what they're continuing to do as a strategy to further promote Kurdistan, to further promote their political agenda throughout Iraq. Is that correct, Nouren?
Absolutely. And this has been an agenda since we allowed the Kurds to come into northern Iraq. It's a very modern day type of agenda, a modern day tactic of genocide, since because of social media and cell phones being so accessible, that it's not as easy to commit genocide, and where it wouldn't be publicized so quickly. So try to do it in the sneakiest, most cover-up way, and that is to scare the people out and to discreetly attack any type of activists who speak out against the oppression. And, as Athra was mentioning, how they, Al-Qush was intact and in his town, thankfully, not only by miracle, but because of their very, very light weaponry, their AK-47s that they had, light guns that they had to defend their town, because the men stayed behind in Al-Qush, something that the Kurds were trying to get them actually to get out. And because of a few very smart locals, they were, they stayed in their hometown. They were able to defend their towns. And this is why it's so important for the United States government to defend these people, because we're not asking for a handout. We're just asking to be helped to get back on our feet. And as long as they help us, just like they've helped the Kurds, just like they've helped many people, this is a long-lasting ally. This is an ally that cannot be radicalized. These are great people. These are historical indigenous people of an ancient homeland that has spread democracy, that has spread humanity and intelligence to not only the Middle East, but the whole world, the cradle of civilization. Why not empower a state, a new state of Assyria, like we empowered a new state of Armenia, a new state of Israel, and then they have colonized the entire Middle East to be all of these Arabized countries, which is fine, but why not have a state of Assyria? I believe it will be the perfect formula to create an equilibrium in the Middle East, something that we all need, a little peace in the Middle East. And I believe that's a great way. And I think that, you know, honestly, what the Kurds have portrayed is just a lot of betrayal. They have betrayed our people, and they could get mad at us and try to threaten us for what we are saying, but it's the truth. And you know, for them to come into our homelands in modern days, in the last 100 years, Darwin, these are modern days. It's today. You know, it's not like we're talking about these caveman times or these savage historical times where people were ruthless. This happened in the last 100 years, and we were massacred in hundreds of thousands. Almost 1 million Assyrians were massacred, and that's an estimate number. When we say, you know, at least 750,000 Assyrians were massacred, this is a number that is, we are lowballing it. I'm sure it's a lot more than that. You know, at one point, the Assyrian Empire was one of the largest, strongest empires to exist. So when we say 750,000 people, you know, that is the lowest number we can throw. We're not doing it like the Armenians are doing it, and they're increasing it to the 1.5 million, which they have rightfully so to do. But Assyrian population, I believe, was a lot larger than that. So there had to have been a lot more, you know, millions to be massacred. 75% of our nation was massacred. So, you know, there needs to be a consequence for this. And the consequence is not just holding these people accountable and constantly that it's happening. Obviously, we're being used as human shields. We're being used in a conflict that we have no part of. And you know, they're looking at us as something they need to get rid of. We're not looked at as first-class citizens, not even second-class citizens. We're looked as a collateral. We're looked as a burden that these people need to be purged out. We need to get rid of them just so we can build this Kurdistan state, you know, and it's the wrong thing to do. I mean, for God's sakes, I can't even believe, I'm appalled by international leaders to watch something like this happen. And Darwin, if you look at how many countries are financially and militarily supporting the KRG, it's quite disgusting. And I know it's for their political agendas and to get in on the oil and the gold that's, you know, that Iraq has, and to dig their paws deep into Iraq, but they're not realizing that they are destroying heritage in Iraq, which are the Assyrian people, that they cannot be reversed. And we can't even pray in our churches, our Assyrian and Chaldean and Syriac churches, in peace, because we don't know when they're going to blow up or when the next attack is going to happen. We're systematically, constantly attacked every 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years. It's constantly happening. And this will be blood on especially American politicians' hands, because they took out Saddam Hussein, which, even though we were still oppressed, but not to this number, our population was still sustained, even though we couldn't identify ourselves by our true ethnicity, but our population was sustained. So you take out Saddam Hussein, you need to do something about that and not let these people get attacked and killed constantly because they believe our lands are up for grabs. Okay, so our lands are up for grabs. Why don't they go to Iran, where they originated from, and try to make a state out of Iran?
Wow. And I'll just say the judgment is going to come from Almighty God. Most importantly, you know, I'm a pro-Israel activist, but I also understand the significance of the biblical Assyrian people and just the heritage and how far it goes back to the beginning of time. I mean, this is well documented, as I said before. And so now we have to focus on the solutions. Now we have to focus on, and I even have to apologize because we've talked about this, Naren, on and off camera. Back when I was ethnic vice chair and we helped win Trump here in 2016 in Michigan, you and I both helped do that. Remember, there was a Armenian resolution that was actually passed from the Michigan Republican Party, and we actually advocated to push a resolution for the Assyrian genocide. If you remember that correctly. So we
Yes.
pushed and we lobbied. We did everything we could at that time to bring more of a focus to this because it's morally what's right. And so now you're right. We have all the way back from ISIS, and you think about all the biblical just landmarks that's been destroyed, and just so many things that's happened. I can't believe that there has not been any type of real documentaries dealing with the biblical heritage here in the Assyrian people and how we're allowing them to be slaughtered, to just be completely pushed from the Middle East. And it's unreal. And I also have to say, looking at Trump's decision to pull out from supporting the Kurds was also, I believe, a decision to help push things in the right direction. So now the Kurds are in a situation where, and remember, there's multiple sects of Kurds, but the particular Kurds that we're talking about, was the PKK. Those particular Kurds at this particular time is who they're bombing, who they're targeting, who's going into the northern Iraq, Assyrian villages, and they're causing this chaos, and they just continue onslaught of these historic people. So at this particular point, how much damage has been done? Do we know the numbers? Maybe Mr. Cato can chime in. Arthur, you can chime in and give us some of the. Do we know the numbers from the recent bombings? It's not getting any type of media coverage. This is an urgent thing. This is why this interview is here, so we can talk about this and we can get the details and what's happening on the ground in northern Iraq to the public.
Yeah, the recent bombing, actually, it comparing it to the ones before was little less, or the ones before were bigger and affected more. But specifically by this bombing, by this the last campaign, if we may say, that started by Turkey against PKK. Before 2 days, there was 13 villages that were emptied at all for 2 days, and because of the bombing, because they could understood even that since years they are just hearing the bombing near them, but it's not really like, when they leave the village, it means that it's on the top, like it's so near them that it could affect them directly in their house or in their church, or like horrifying them. But if you go, like, for example, today there was just bombing, and ironically, one of the people of Chilik, one of the villages that they were emptied, he was like, well, today it was fine, and we tried to return to the town. It was fine comparing to the other days because the bombing wasn't really near us. So it's like there is bombing, there is PKK around. There is actually in some village that they come inside the town. Like one of the times I saw it by my eyes, that they are in open area making a party in one of our towns. It's like there is a fight between you and Turkey, like PKK and Turkey is bombing wherever you are. So they are partying in the middle of the town. So that's really bringing the fire to our town and using our people as human shields. But at the same time, Turkey is saying wherever and whenever is the PKK, we will bomb them. So it's like two sides fighting, and we are in the middle continuously. So just lately, thank God there was no casualties from our people, and they didn't lose a lot of the farming land that had been burned in the years before. For example, in Nala Valley and other areas, there was just one of the cars of a teacher had been affected by some scraps, but the bombing was really near the town of Bersiveh. And there was a video published that you can hear the children crying because it was so near the village. And that's like, thank God there was somebody to record that video, and then it became like it reached many places in the world and the media and so on. But this is continuously happening. And the other times, like now, like the people of these specific towns in the border, the 13 villages, for example, that are mentioned down, are not really practicing their life. They have gardens in the mountain, they have farming places in the mountain. They can't go because they are afraid that the airstrikes may think they are PKK and they will bomb them. They have shepherds, they have sheep to go in the mountains to feed them. They can't anymore since many years. So it's like economically attacking them, like affecting them, and psychologically, and from all sides is affecting them.
Wow. So at this particular time, Naren, do we know any actual more statistics? I thank you, Arthur Cato, because you spoke about 13 tribes being pushed out. Naren, do you have any statistics more about what's happened so we can know more about the damage that's been caused in these particular areas? Because clearly there's an agenda to push the people out, which it doesn't take much. I mean, you start bombing, that's a clear indication there will be a lot of lives lost if you don't leave. So evacuating the area doesn't take much to do if they're continuing to bomb. And this is not something that I agree with. I mean, this is absolutely terrible. So the damage, the harm, I really want to hear your perspective on this too, Naren.
Absolutely, Darwin. That's a great question. And, you know, the damage, most of the damage is done to the PKK, thankfully, even though I don't agree with Turkish foreign policies, but, you know, we need any type of terrorist to get out of our hometowns, just get out. And so the infrastructure damage is definitely there. You know, the impact just from a bomb landing on the ground, you know, that's, and our people thrive on their crops, and, you know, the agriculture is really important just historically in the Fertile Crescent. So this psychological trauma, that's the type of damage that cannot be reversed. You know, our people have... Absolutely. And our people have endured just centuries of psychological trauma, genocide, the constant oppression attacks. And that is because we don't have prominent borders. We don't have our state of Assyria with self-government. That would definitely be a solution to correct the problem, as I've expressed to President Trump. And so this type of trauma, you know, people are constantly contacting me, our people, Yazidis, even Kurds themselves. And they're just saying, you know, they're very afraid. They're hearing the bombings. They, you know, they don't know if they should leave. They want to speak out about it. They're just so terrified. These people that were too afraid to ever speak out, they're at a point where they don't even care if they're going to get killed by the governments for speaking out. They just want to let the word out, what they're doing to their towns, what they're doing to their people, what that is constantly being done. And that's, you know, that's something I'm hearing in their voice, I'm seeing in their faces. It's awful. And you know, it's just this repetitive attack, repetitive, constant behavior. And I want to clarify as well for our American audience about the PKK, about these Kurdish rebel groups. What they're doing is they're building these underground tunnels, which is actually a very common tactic of a terrorist group like Hamas, like Al-Qaeda, ISIS. You know, they're building these tunnels. Yes. So what they're doing is Turkey is also they've also deployed Turkish soldiers to try to find these tunnels, to put different type of monitoring strategies to find out if they're going to keep building these tunnels. So now our hometowns have literally become a war zone, aside from, you know, the current bombings, but we're afraid that this is going to keep happening because now Turkeys came in literally on boot. They're actually on the grounds, even if the locals may not know yet. Yes, they are there. They're on the ground. It's not just the Air Force bombing. And they're doing that to monitor what the PKK is doing and to try to wipe them out completely, like they are doing in Syria as well. So this is a very dangerous tactic. And actually, the tunnels that were built even by Hamas to Israel, they were able to drag IDF soldiers from the tunnels back to their borders and behead them or slaughter them. This is a very scary thing. We will lose people. We will lose Assyrians because anyone who doesn't comply with them, this is going to be their murder areas underground to create more genocide tactics where no one can see it on any kind of drone, any kind of human rights UN monitoring that is happening. And this is a scary thing. And this is why groups like PKK and working with YPG, and in fact, I have confirmed personally as well with a group of colleagues that they're all in cahoots together. Because when we were praising the elimination of PKK, let me tell you that in Washington, D.C., Kurdish lobbyists were on their knees crying, and they were so upset with us that we were in support of getting rid of a terrorist organization that is a terrorist organization on the United States terrorist watch list, on the UN, European Union terrorist watch list, on many other countries' terrorist watch list. This is a terrorist organization. They're not freedom fighters, for God's sakes. And they were so upset. These are Kurdish lobbyists who walk into the White House. They were crying because PKK was being bombed, which really, really concludes that they're all together, because the PKK is like their frontline workers. They are their Marines, that supposedly they're freedom fighters that go in to try to prepare a land to be grabbed, to steal. This is the truth. And I know that our CIA knows this, and this is a terrible thing that we must condemn, and we must not condone for a political agenda, because people are being slaughtered. And, we're the greatest country in the world. We're the United States of America, and we must step forward first and put an end to this, and secure these endangered people, the Assyrian people, which includes our Chaldeans and Syriacs, all of our churches, all of our denominations, all of our people, and indigenous people, almost 7,000 years old, to be given their state. We're not asking for something that's not ours. Those are our homelands. All of Iraq, Syria, parts of Turkey, parts of Iran. This is ancient Assyria, Darwin. And the best thing that President Trump can do and the United States government can do is rebuild a state that will be an ally to the whole world, that will, promote unity, acceptance, democracy, and all of the great things that are values here in the United States and in the West have. And even Muslims will be able to live in peace and not be in these tribal wars against each other and this hate. I've spoken to countless Sunnis and Shias and even Kurds, and you know what they said to me, Darwin? We wish Assyrians were in power. We wish Assyrians were in governance, because we know that things would be right. We know that we would live in equality. And that was so touching to me to hear. And that is the truth.
So my question is, you state that so beautifully, Naren, and you always have, and I think you paint a picture in the hearts and the minds of the viewers that, for me, you've made me a believer in the Assyrian cause, the Assyrian people, and we know how powerful the opposite lobby. We've worked with organizations, we know people who run organizations, and they work against our efforts. But the PKK, certified terrorist group here, a terrorist organization, they're labeled here in America and other places. Now, who's running? This is just kind of an objective question. Who's running Iraq right now, as far as the prime minister, the government? What's the agenda there? And who's running things? Can you guys both give me a perspective on that? Especially you, Arthur. I want to know your perspective, because you're there, and I want to know what's the agenda here. What's really happening?
Well, supposedly the prime minister should be leading Iraq, and he is the commander, the highest general commander of the Iraqi forces. But the corruption
in Iraq.
Excuse
me, I don't mean to interrupt you. What's his name? If you can just describe him.
Kadhimi. He took his position lightly in a few months ago. But the situation was, after 2003, it was normally like that, because if we may say it in this way, that many countries are fighting each other inside Iraq. So the influence of Iran is so big in the government, and many parties having these security forces, these militias are controlling wherever they want and doing whatever they want. So the corruption in Iraq between these political parties, these political groups, that some of them are radical, some of them are racist, and many of them are following other countries, are like bringing the agenda of Turkey inside Iraq, Saudi Arabia, then Iran, then like each group fighting the other group for another regional country. So there was some steps that happened that we don't really see a good result of, that the Iraqi army or the borders, they call them the borders guards, that are in KRG, in these borders between Turkey and Iraq, in the Kurdistan regional government, they had been enforced, like they brought some enforcement in the borders, but that didn't really affect so much, because there is really big areas especially in our towns, that are controlled by PKK. Like even the Peshmerga can't go there without calling or contacting this PKK. While this is an Iraqi territory, and it's administratively and by Iraqi constitution controlled by the KRG. So it's like you must see some forces on the ground from this country, but you can't. You will see just, and in some areas they even put a checkpoint of PKK. Like you can see a checkpoint, they will check your card, your ID card, and to go to your own village by somebody you don't know where he is from or what does he want to do, but you know something that he is bringing bombing from Turkey. And if you stand against them, and as a people, as the civilians there, they are afraid to stand against this group, because they might take them, they might kill them, or injure them in a way or another.
So Naren, who's in control there? Like, what is the agenda? Ultimately, I want to know your take on that.
Absolutely, Darwin, that's a great question, because you would think that the Iraqi central government would put their foot down and say, look, we need a united Iraq if they believe in a united Iraq. So why allow a regional government to grow, first of all? And I know that had a lot to do with the invasion in Iraq, taking out Saddam Hussein because he gassed the Kurds, and then they gave them a safe haven, which was their exact plan, something they've been trying to do since 1914. It failed. Then they tried again in 1933, where the Iraqi military was infiltrated by a general who claimed to be Iraqi, but he was Kurdish, and with an entire Kurdish agenda, Sadir to create this Kurdistan even then. And actually he was caught and killed. He was executed because for treason. He had fired all the Iraqi generals, or all the Iraqi sergeants and commanders, and replaced them with Kurdish ones. So the Iraqi military finally caught on to it and executed him. And now it's happening again. History is repeating itself. The president, I believe, Athra, you can correct me, he's of Kurdish descent of Iraq. Mustafa, is that correct, Athra?
Mustafa, I don't think he's Kurdish.
I know that he's part of the PUK. So they're connected. The problem is there's a lot of conflict of interest, Darwin, and they're connected to these Kurdish parties or Kurdish, politics, and that's a big conflict of interest. You have to put somebody in a prime minister position and in the government of Iraq, as far as the leading positions, the speaker positions, the prime minister position, that is not in that mentality, that beehive mentality, to only work for one agenda. They're not working for a united Iraq. And that is why Assyrians are fed up with this. This is the constant, decades of betrayal of claiming that we are a united Iraq, because Assyrians, we wouldn't rebel against the government. We love all Iraqis. We love all Turkmens. We have Sunni Shias, even the Kurds, the Yazidis, we consider even part of us. But the problem is that there is no united Iraq because the Kurds have created a regional government. So they are in control of northern Iraq, and they have made the Iraqi central government look this small, because when something is happening in one of our towns where they are literally removing the mayor of the town and replacing them with somebody with their Kurdish agenda, with their own personal agendas, and the central government can't even send a military there to remove her. I mean, that's ridiculous. And this is happening. This is how they do the demographic change. This is how they take over our towns one by one. And it is very important that we keep them out of the Nineveh plains, because that is the last threshold we have left. The Iraqi central government, I believe the international communities really need to know there's a conflict of interest happening, because us placing a new government in power by removing Saddam Hussein, we must ensure that there is no biased racism and supporters of genocide, supporters of ethnic cleansing, separatists, the real separatists who are breaking up Iraq since 1914. They must, even Iraqis must acknowledge that this is a problem. And if they don't correct it, then this state of Assyria must be implemented immediately, because we cannot depend on anyone for protection. I had actually done some investigative journalism in Iraq and found out that actually, and even in Mosul, there were very high-ranking officers that were assigned to protect the Assyrian Christians, the Yazidis. Right before ISIS invaded, there were helicopters waiting for them that picked them up and took them to Erbil. How did they know that? How did they know that we were going to be invaded? And guess what their ethnicity was, Darwin? They were Kurdish. This whole time, I mean, how did they allow ISIS to invade? Why were our people disarmed right before ISIS? And I know that when I confronted the ambassadors in Washington, D.C., they didn't like my question. And I've told you off air what they did afterwards, because they didn't like my question. But these things aren't by coincidence. This is all part of that same plan, just like we're being used as human shields, and they're attracting Turkish bombs. I mean, Turkish bombs, Darwin, are ruthless. I mean, they're a very strong military power. The way they are bombing and attacking, the way they are bombing PKK is they want to annihilate them. But the problem is PKK is using us, and we're caught right in the middle. And this is an ongoing problem. And I really, really hope to God that something is done. When Saddam Hussein gassed the Kurds because they were rebelling against the central government, which I don't believe in massacring innocent people because they're rebelling against the government, but that is his mentality, his way of stopping a rebellious attack against the central government. And immediately what we did was implement a safe haven. What are we doing now? Our people, just not even to count the prior genocides, just since 2014, we have decreased in over 1 million, and decreasing by the week, by the month, by the day. What are we doing for them? I know that President Trump supports a safe haven, and I know that there are so many things on the table, and including that, that we're being promised that he's working on. But this is very, very time sensitive. This needs to be done now, so that amazing people like Athra stay in our homelands. My family, we were purged out, just like hundreds and millions of other Assyrians were purged out from fear of living, not knowing when your daughter is going to be kidnapped or your son would be forced to be drafted into a war that is ongoing, constant, unnecessary, and this is why. This is a strategy of genocide. And when Armenians, when they suffered a genocide, They fought for in Armenia, and they were supported to have a state of Armenia. We had a Jewish Holocaust, and they were able to reestablish Israel, rightfully so. And now it is time, in today's time, to reestablish the state of Assyria. This is the only way any nation can move forward, because every nation, every international leader is well aware of what's happening in Iraq. Nothing is a secret. They all know very well what's happening to the Assyrian people, all of our churches that have distracted, and they all have a responsibility, because they are all militarily and financially funding groups like PKK, funding the KRG, and they have created a future problem for us, so they must correct it.
And see, the great thing, you just pointed out something when you stated about how you have this conflict of interest right now throughout Iraq. And I believe it's because of that conflict of interest that you have the Kurds, multiple sects, different things, but they're being used. And in pretty much any way the wind blows, the administration goes, the Kurds pretty much go in that direction to establish themselves. And I did some research before this interview, and it stated that, because of the Assyrians' population and their numbers, it's like almost a disadvantage politically, which is absurd, because, when there's, doing right is right. Morally doing the right thing shouldn't necessarily be based upon. And why do you think these populations continue to get lower and lower and lower, as you stated? Simply because no one has supported the Assyrian people as they should have, and created the safe haven so that they could. And maybe more people will return back to Iraq. Maybe those numbers could easily go up if you start having individuals to do that. So my question is, will we ever get back to a biblical worldview on Iraq? It seems there's so many different contradictions. And as we spoke before, and I even had a chance to speak with Arthur and let him know some of the things and experiences where I come from being a pro-Israel activist. I just came back from Israel, and I would probably been 2-3 times to Israel, hadn't, COVID and everything started. So Israel is military strong. Israel is increasing. I believe, and it's even stated, even Arab countries are admitting this, that Israel is going to be controlling a lot, or at least the strategic agenda for the Middle East concerning Iraq and just the Middle East in general. Do we and will we have a biblical Middle East in the sense of Iraq to support the Jewish state? Is this something that is something the Assyrian or Iraqi individuals are willing to get behind in order to bring that peace? Because peace is important. But if we don't have a biblical worldview on things, then I don't know if that peace is going to be sustained. Even with that enforced, we're still going to, it's throughout Revelations, throughout the Bible, we know there's going to be wars and rumors of wars. There's going to be things that happen where nations are going to rise up against Israel. But my question is this an agenda that we can get behind in the Middle East? As far as Iraq, will we have a biblical Middle East? Will this be an agenda? Because I believe that's the only way that the Assyrian people are going to be recognized for who they really are. Their history goes back as the Chinese, as the Jews, as everyone else. Seriously, it's documented. Like, you can't just annihilate a people and push them out. But if we don't stay true to the biblical worldview of things, now that Israel is strong, I believe there is some negotiations. I even heard that you had a coalition of Assyrians in Israel negotiating on the future of the Aramaic language and things of that, which is great reports. But where are we going to go with this? And again, that's not excluding Muslims, and that's not excluding anything like that, because you have Muslims and Christians and Jews right in even Israel and Jerusalem. So my question would be, are we going to get to this biblical worldview as far as Iraq and the Middle East?
We believe in that, and actually we are working on it. Even that on the ground we are facing many occasions. If we focus on the political side, that we are facing during the last years, and we were thinking after 2003, we were believing that the next Iraq will be better, and we believe in peace. We are Christians, so we believe in peace. We want to give love and to receive love at the same time. So we were hopeful that we will see something to change for our people after 2003. But after that, we saw something else, that it became worst by especially from the religious side, by Al-Qaeda and other groups. And then here in northern Iraq, we are facing racism, that you can see that the KRG is showing that they are protecting Christians. So yeah, you are praying and that's it. I can put pressure on you, but yeah, you can go to your church, that's it, and that's your life. So
I don't mean to interrupt you either, but I want to ask a question. So when we talk about the Islamic State, I mean, right now, we have to be very honest about the conflict in Iraq. I mean, that wasn't an Islamic agenda. And right now you have an agenda being pushed, whether it's Islamic, whether it is, based on supporting the Jewish state. And I think it's very black and white here. So what powers are in control? And the Syrians, they're in the Bible. So at some point we have to really nip this in the bud. I believe there's going to be more rumors of wars and more wars and more chaos if you push a radical Islamic agenda in Iraq. And that, to me, is where Assyrians are going to continue to be persecuted, because when you even have sayings throughout the Arab nations that in Islamic nations that first you kill the Jews and then you later kill the Christians, it's very clear what the agenda is. So at some point, are we going to get real about this? And I know the historical, ethnic, and other type of conflicts, but right now we don't have, the Syrian people don't have time for that. We have to stick to what really the agenda is going to be. So do you really believe we're going to have either more radical Islamic culture there, or are we going to have more of a pluralist type of Christian, or even, that can acknowledge the state of Israel? Like, what are we going to have here? Because in my opinion, I only see one way in this situation.
Athra, maybe you can touch on Prophet Nahum's tomb in Al-Qush and how Assyrians have been taking care of it for over 2,000 years. And, Athra, like maybe just touch on, and Darwin, just, the fact when Assyrians have a friendship with all civilized nations and all civilized people, we respect all identities and all religions. And because we created the first laws, the Code of Hammurabi, the first cities, and not to go deep into that, but we speak with actions too, not just words. So for example, our people have been taking care of a Jewish prophet, Nahum's tomb, for over 2,000 years, including Athra's family. They rotate to take care of this tomb and literally protected it with their life. And nobody else did that but the Assyrian people in Al-Qush. And the Assyrians lived in peace with the Jews. We were like family together, and the whole time Assyrians were in any power in that region, or were in great numbers in that region, we worked with the Jews, we learned from each other, and we protected them. Even my grandmother had fought face to face with some Kurds who killed a Jewish doctor right in front of her. But the Assyrians have an ideology of democracy, of peace, of faith, of God. So that would answer your question. And I believe Athra is in a very difficult position of where he's at, being surrounded by radicals. And it's very difficult also to answer questions like that without facing immediate repercussions. But I just want Israel to look at our actions and not just what we are publicizing in an area where people literally have a gun and a sword to their heads. Even though Kurds claim that they are friends with Israel, that they support Israel, but let's speak the truth. Who got rid of all the Jews in northern Iraq? My family is a testimony to the constant attacks against the Jewish doctors and engineers of what they did to the Jews in northern Iraq. And now they are claiming that they are best friends with them because they know that Israel has a great political strength, militarily strength. They have incredible power in Congress and Senate, in the United States Senate. So of course, these are just words, Darwin. This doesn't mean anything. All they have to look at is their background. And I'm not trying to ruin a relationship that they have formed, but it's basically like you're building a house out of glass, you know, and supporting the Assyrians would be building a concrete cement foundation, because we have been living in peace together, and just looking at something that small, which to us is big, maybe small to them, taking care of Prophet Nahum's tomb for over 2,000 years. People can barely take care of their own houses for 50 years. And maybe Athra can touch in details about this Prophet Nahum's tomb in Al-Qush.
Well, I just want to say thank you, Naren, for speaking up for Arthur, talking about the security concerns, because I have to always keep that in mind. We all do, including viewers. There's some things that may be stated, some things we may not, because of the safety of where he actually is. So that's a great point. And so many things you just stated, Naren. But I wanted to touch on something because I had a chance to meet, I want just to be sure, I met a father, he's a bishop, a Gabriel Nadar. And excuse me, I believe he's a Syrian, if I'm correct. But I had a chance to meet with him, and he's speaking for Christians in Israel right now. And he's creating an alliance there that I've never seen before. And so I want to see if this can continue and build. And I'll do everything on my part to speak out for the Syrian people in the consideration of an Assyrian safe haven, in consideration of even what a state would look like for that. But please, if you can, add to some of the commentary we've just discussed, if you could, sir.
Yeah, actually, I just want to add something, because Nahran mentioned many things, that in all this area in northern Iraq, the only tomb, the only building that's still surviving is Nahum in Al-Qush. And not just because it's protected, as the people of Al-Qush used to protect Al-Qush regularly from anybody. Nobody else did. Like literally nobody protected Al-Qush during the history. But it's the opposite. Many times the army wanted to attack Al-Qush, but the people stood against. And so not only that's protected, but in other areas had been these shrines and these religious Jewish areas, in addition, and beside the Christian areas, sites had been destroyed in all other areas in northern Iraq and in all Iraq. But the only thing that happened to, which is beside my house, actually, we are neighbors to the building of Nahum tomb, and the only thing that affected it, because there was no renovation, and because the government used to prevent the people to renovate it, so it collapsed.
Oh, wow.
It collapsed parts of it, and now, thanks to God, it's being renovated in a very professional way. What I wanted to mention that yes, we want a state that we have power in, but even a small part of it, that if we are calling, like, while we talk with politicians, while we talk with the media about this point of state, they are like, well, you are a minority. Even that, if we get back to it, that there is a reason that we became minority, but we go forward with them. In 2014, there was a decision by Iraqi Ministers' Council that to create a new province for the minorities, and the majority in this province would be the Yazidis and the Syrians. So it was in January. Then after 6 months, we faced ISIS in the area. So everything was stopped. After we get rid of ISIS in this area, now Nineveh Plain, the herd of the Assyrian Christians of Iraq had been divided to two parts. That part of it is controlled by KRG, that they are claiming it's part of KRG and it's Kurdistan, and they are pushing for the agenda that already Nahran said, the mayor of Al-Qush had been changed forcibly on our people. And even that we demonstrated, we protested 3 times, and we stood against it. And even the court of Iraq brought back the old mayor, but they didn't care. Actually, when he went to his office, they beaten him and kicked him out of the office, like government office. So the thing that we were aiming at, and to be logical politically, to have a province that could serve the minorities in the area administratively and militarily, to have our own forces, which we have a proof that we are like, we have a Nineveh Plain protection units, and it is serving and protecting one of, or the biggest town in Nineveh Plain, which it contains currently 30,000. Before it was 55,000 before ISIS. Now we have 30,000 people that are security profile of that town, controlled by the Nineveh Plain Protection Unit, which is an Assyrian Christian force, and officially recognized and being paid by the government. So this force, you can never see any, like since 2014 until now, you will not see anything being used, like some actions that are against human rights or anything like other militias are doing. So we have a great example how we are able to protect ourselves, how we are able to administrate ourselves. But the main thing that we want to have is getting rid of, if we may call them, the outside agenda. We don't want any Kurdish agenda to like, especially the racist Kurdish agenda to come in our areas. We
Correct.
don't want any Iranian influence in our area. So what we are asking currently is only a province, which we are not getting, because the surrounding political parties and sides in Iraq. So if some countries are really not being like focusing on the number of the Assyrians, we are looking for province. So just let these sides that are fighting in our land go out from our areas. That's what we are asking for. And the most support that came, I would say it clearly, that majority of the support that came to the KRG in the name of the Christians, of Assyrians, Chaldeans, Syriacs, had been used politically against these people.
I would agree.
So,
Specifically by the past administration, the former administration, I would absolutely agree. And just to say, in wrapping up, because I know we want to keep things within a certain time period, I want to leave this part of the interview and segment to put out the solutions to this problem. What are you asking for? What are you urging American politicians to do, viewers? If there's if there's websites you can promote for, I think there's a Syrian Aid website. If Naren, you guys can put that out. I just would like to say in closing and to conclude that I would like to see a more of a biblical and complete biblical mandate for the Middle East, specifically the Syrian people and what is considered now Iraq. And I believe, and I urge on American politicians to not back down or shy away because of political culture, any type of intimidation or backlash that they may fear, to stand up and biblically define the Middle East. And I think that is our roadmap for peace. And we know there's still going to be wars, even with a biblical worldview. But we know for sure that that is the truth. That is the way, that's the right way of going about it from a international policy perspective. So I want to let you guys give us your solutions, what you're urging for individually, and we'll wrap this up. This is really just an introduction, and I know we'll do more further, and we'll continue this on as a series, is what I really view this to be, and we'll continue on.
Absolutely. Athra, if you want to start the...
Yeah. Actually, there is a political plan. What's in the Bible is the biggest goal, which is we believe that the Bible is giving the peace to the world. So what's written there is if we may say, the great solution for the area. But politically, we are really working for some steps. As I said, officially the basic decision is taken by the Iraqi government that to have our own province for the Assyrians and Yazidis in Shabak, and there is some other Arab village and so on. So establishing this new province, having our own local men to protect us, and these men to be supported directly on the ground, and not to have a militia or some force outside the government. No, to be part of the government of Iraq's security forces, but to have our own men, our own officers, that we are able to protect ourselves. We are able to do that. Also, that the administration side to be controlled by the people of the area, from the Yazidis, Assyrians, all like according to the democratic way. And then after that, to make it this province to be protected as a safe zone, and at the same time having international offices to watch, supervise, to supervising the area to prevent this, as I said, this that affected us since 2003, which are the racist and radical groups, and outside, like the regional countries influence in the area. So basically, that's what we need. We don't need boots on the grounds. We just need the support. We are the boots on the ground, and we are those people who can administrate ourselves. We created the administration. We created everything since thousands of years. So we can do it today, and in that way, that's the only way we can survive here. And as you mentioned, Darwin, that we don't have enough time. We don't have enough time left for our people in our homeland. And about the website that is showing here, there is a campaign made by the Assyrian Aid Society. It's based in Iraq, and it has branches in America, Australia, and other Western countries that is serving the Syrian people from the humanitarian side. And they made campaign to help these people in these villages to have better way of living, even that we can't stop the bombing currently, but at least help the people to have better tools for agriculture, for their jobs, their way of living.
Thank you, Athro. I think that was really powerful. I think I really felt that. I'm sure our viewers will as well. So Naren.
Yes, Darwin, I try to think of the most realistic plan, a plan that we really need implemented in the next year or max 2 years. Like, this can't even prolong in the next 5 years because our people will be gone. But I also want to remind not only the United States government, but the international leadership and especially the nations that are so heavily involved in the politics in that region, that just quite recently, we're finding that we're not such a small minority. Right now, there are about estimated 4 million Assyrian Christians, including all of our Chaldean churches and Syriac churches, about 4 million of us. And not counting the recently founded Assyrian Jews in Israel. Some of the roots of Israel came from Assyria, the Assyrian Jews in Israel.
That's good, and great point.
Recently, even more recently, that is emerging in not just thousands, but millions. We are finding these Assyrian Muslims who were forced to Islam, and they're to a point where literally they're being monitored in some towns by the Kurdish locals to make sure they attend mosques, every week. And if they don't show up, they're knocking on their door. But these are millions. In fact, someone that I recently interviewed, he's estimating in just his nearby area, 2 million Assyrian Muslims. Darwin, this means that we can easily, just a matter of month of education and giving them a safe haven or a state, telling them, just like what happened to the Jews going back home, come back home to Assyria. Come back home to Assyria. Isaiah 19:23 prophecy is literally being unveiled in our lifetime. Come back home. We will protect you. As Athra mentioned, we will have our own military with a self-government. They will be able to choose their faith. If they want to return to their original faith or whatever they choose to do, come back home to your state, to your home that we have rebuilt, and you will be safe. You will never be harmed again. I bet you this 4 million we have in the diaspora, we have more in the Middle East. We have at least 10 to 20 million Assyrians who were ethnically cleansed, religiously cleansed, and I'm being contacted by them every single day, Darwin. I've literally read my phone in tears because people are saying just in the last 2-3 generations have forgotten who they were and asked their fathers or their grandfathers or great-grandfathers, who are we really? Do we have any kind of connection to Assyrians? And the answers they heard brought them to their knees. And what they said to them, yes, we were Assyrians not too long ago, but you know what, son? We have to do this to keep safe. So, and even Assyrians were calling themselves Kurdish, but they were saying that they speak the language of Lishanadiyan. Lishanadiyan in Assyrian means our language. So it's literally just to protect themselves, to camouflage themselves, Darwin. We can easily, if we are given our state, and I think it needs to be more than enough to not only hold our population in the Middle East, but for Assyrians that want to go back home, which we have so many refugees and immigrants, and I talk to them constantly, and they said, you know what, if we had our own region and we are safe and we know we'd be safe, I would rather go back home. And not because they're not grateful for being in the diaspora. Somebody like myself, or, you know, people that grew up here, I was born in Iraq, spent my childhood there, but people that grew up here, it'll be a little harder for them to go back home, even though I would love to. But the majority, a lot of them, I would say more than half of the recently immigrated Assyrians would definitely return back home. That, I think that a province, I think that is something that we're politically asking for in the homelands, but I think what our people deserve, the people in the diaspora, what we are demanding is a state of Assyria, because we know the map of Iraq is being redrawn. In fact, the map of that region is being redrawn. And I think that the betrayal of, you know, the World War I, World War II, I think that we really need to get to this. This needs to be done. This is something that's being put in the back burner to reestablish the state of Assyria. But for some reason, Darwin, this enemy that we have is trying so hard to prevent this from happening. And I think that international leaders need to stand firm and say, you know what, these people have suffered enough. They can't just label us as Christians anymore, because we're not only Christians. For God's sakes, we have over 10 million Assyrian Muslims who are converted by force. They're living in Turkey, in Iran, you know, even in Syria. I just spoke to a pretty high-ranking Syrian commander who said his grandfather is Assyrian, but he's practicing the Islamic faith. And anyone else would have met him, would have thought he's just a Syrian Muslim. He's Assyrian. And you know, that's just taking, you know, simply going back to your original last name or what town you originated from. But I think state of Assyria is very important. I think the immediate support is definitely going to the AssyrianAid.org to financially support in this bombing situation. And I have to say about Assyrian Aid, I love this organization. I got so much feedback when I was blasting you know, in the previous years. I got so much feedback from all of our people, from all denominations, saying, you know what? When I approached them, I was not turned down because I wasn't part of their church or their organization. Like, they help everyone that needs help. They are unbiased. They don't discriminate. They are so amazing, and they are hands-on, on the ground. They have experience doing this. And I think that as far as a political request, you know, I think that we really need to put our mind and our heart where things need to be done. And I think that Israel financially and militarily supporting the KRG and you know, their agenda is really harming our people. I think, you know, being a huge advocate of Israel, I have went face to face with anti-Semitic politicians. And I think that, like I said, actions speak louder than words. I think what they need to do is really look at what happened in the Holocaust. What if somebody was supporting and financially and militarily supporting the Nazis? Like, that would break their hearts. When we see this, that they are supporting the same people who are oppressing us, it is breaking our hearts, especially when we are we were protecting them in Iraq, and we were neighbors with them. We loved them. We accepted them like one of ours. And that needs, this constant, no matter what happens, no matter what type of gift we are given as far as the state, when they are supporting the wrong groups, we are constantly funding and supporting the wrong groups. The financial military support needs to go to the Assyrian people. And that's not because I'm Assyrian. I promise you that all of these American lives that we sacrificed in Iraq should not go in vain. We have spent so much time in Iraq that, I've lost friends, American soldiers, and American veterans who contact me and said, I fought with all my heart, to try to give freedom to your people. And I will forever cherish that. That should not go in vain. But that region is a failed state. I'm afraid to say, from the Kurdish regional government, is a failed regional government, that that governance of that region is failed. You saw the protest, Darwin, where protesters were being attacked and bombed, and in so many great numbers. And so it's a failed state. I think an unfailed state, a state that would be beautiful, would be an alliance. And I think that we need to go straight to the state. I think a province can be easily demolished. I think we shouldn't go there more than once. I think that if we're going to do it, we need to do it right. And that way, we're not sacrificing. This won't even cost anything to the United States. In fact, this will help the United States because they're going to have a dependable ally that is a friendship that will prolong forever, for as long as this earth is standing. So I definitely believe that, we need to go straight to the point. No more beating around the bush. And we need this. We need this now, like Athra said. This is time sensitive.
And just to clarify, I'm not certain that Israel is supporting the YPG, but I'm certain that I've read research on Israel having somewhat of a relationship with the Kurds. And what sect, I don't know, but I would love to know where Israel stands on a possible Assyrian statehood and where that would stand and what are the underlying issues. I would like to know more about this. So I'm gonna do everything that I can on my end to make sure of that. But I just wanted to clarify that I don't believe that they're supporting the PKK. However, I do know that they're heavily monitoring them. So a lot of this has a lot to do with political strategy, war strategy, but I would like to see a stronger front of Assyrians supporting the statehood of the Israeli state. And also I would love to see them support the Assyrian state and be more of a stability throughout the Middle East there. So I definitely believe you said something that most people are not researching, they're not studying, they're not dealing with. So we need to put that on the forefront. So any other closing remarks, websites, anything else before we close out? I think you really took it home, Naren, and I thank you, Athra, Kadu. I really do appreciate you, sir, as well. Hope we can work in the future and do more interviews, and definitely we'll get used to all working together, pushing a unified front for Iraq and for the Assyrian people. So thank you. I really appreciate everyone. And for all the future readers and those, share this message, get this out as much as possible. Let's make sure we let this go viral so that we can discuss this issue and bring it to the forefront, because I'm certain if Biden gets in, speaking about the November election, I don't believe anything is going to be resurrected from the Bible of the Assyrian people are going to be strengthened. And so I believe even if Donald Trump is reelected, we'll be able to push this agenda further about a biblical Middle East and the Assyrian people. So I would like to see that clarified from the Jewish state as well. And thank you, and God bless to everybody.
Thank you. Thank you for your channel.
Thank you so much. I'm not sure if you had any last words.
I just want to say, whatever happens in Iraq, Syria, Turkey, and Iran, just think about us, because it always affects us. It's
Absolutely.
Always, even that it's like Arab mentioned, Kurds, Turks, whatever nation is mentioned, we are there affected, and most of the time negatively, not from the positive things, but always from the negative things.
Thank you, sir. Again, we have Naren Abwiya, human civil rights Assyrian activist. I really do appreciate all of you, and Mr. Cato again from the Navita Plains, I believe, in Iraq. So we really appreciate everybody here. And as we close out, thank you and God bless.
نشكر الرب في الآرامية الذي أعاننا كي ننجز مشروع إطلاق أول قناة باللغة الفارسية، قناة ملكوت السماء. وبهذه المناسبة ندعوكم للاحتفال معنا في برامج على البث المباشر مع باقة من خدام الرب بالكلمة والترنيم، وذلك في الأيام التالية: الاحتفال باللغة العربية الاثنين 15 يونيو حزيران 8 مساء بتوقيت شرق أمريكا، 5 مساء بتوقيت كاليفورنيا. الاحتفال باللغة الإنجليزية الثلاثاء 16 يونيو حزيران 8 مساء بتوقيت شرق أمريكا، 5 مساء بتوقيت كاليفورنيا. يمكنكم مشاهدة هذه القناة على منصات التقنيات الحديثة: Apple TV, Roku TV, Fire TV, all smart TV such as Sony TV and Samsung TV, IPTV devices, boxes, IBN-SAT app, all smartphones, all smart devices, IBN website, Trinity Channel website.
Thank you for watching Trinity Channel. Please consider in your heart to give into this ministry. As it says in 2 Corinthians 9:7, so let each one give as he purposes in his heart, not grudgingly or of necessity, for God loves a cheerful giver.
You can help support